Well, hello there. Uh, this is actually take two because I had started recording and then realized I forgot to turn off notifications on my phone, which the mic does pick up um, and gets very irritating. So here we go again. It's the night of April, I'm sorry, not April anymore, May 3rd, 2019. Approximately 10:25 Eastern Time here in lovely Central Florida. Yeah, lovely Central Florida. Um, due in part to work-related stress, I didn't get much actual first draft writing done. I finished one scene for My Soul to Keep, and then I realized that there should have been a scene that came before it. So, yeah, I'm now trying to get through that. And interesting to say that I'm trying. I'll get to that in a little bit. Something I paraphrase about trying. Um, I also thought about printing up printing out part of another story that I had been working on in order to try and get back into that. Uh, Unfortunately, I had to replace the black ink cartridge on my printer, and if I had bought the right cartridges, that would have been nice too. But, well, enough said. Um, so since it's just for me, and I have the color cartridge has plenty of ink in it, and I have two cartridges waiting to be used, so I just printed it out in blue. I mean, it's for me, so whatever. Um, I still have no idea what I want the cover of Stranger to look like, and I really should get that together because I have to get both Stranger and Raven formatted and published. I'm probably going to do them a month apart, so and I really have to get on that. The problem that I have sometimes is that there's not a day at work when I don't walk out of there with a splitting damn headache. Um, I just partly it's the job itself. I'm an extreme introvert, and I don't like interacting with people I don't know, and I work in a call center. Yeah, go figure. But hell, it's better than it was. I spent 27 years in customer-facing retail. Call centers are slightly better. But, you know, I come home, and of course I live alone, which is me and the cat, and she refuses to at least start working on dinner. So when I get home, I have to make dinner, and, you know, I have to do everything, you know, the laundry, the weekly food shopping, and all that. Not that I'm complaining, but it's just, you know, then I have to start carving out time. In fact, recording this is cutting into writing time. So there's that. But we find the time where we can. And the good thing about the way I write is I'm constantly writing subconsciously. It's all up here. I just have to get it down on paper. And that's the hard part. Excuse me. But that is the good thing about being a self-published author. If I need to slow down, I will slow down. I will work at a slower pace if I need to in order to get the work done. You know, that's and let me go into this tangent. I wanted to talk about the third book, but we'll get to that in a minute. One of the things that I find really annoying are people who don't understand that while, yeah, you should think of writing as a job, because in essence it is, especially if you're self-published, not everybody does the same thing. Or as I like to say, we all do the same thing differently. We we don't all work at the same pace. We don't all have the opportunity to sit there and jam out 5,000 words. I would love to sit and write 5,000 words every day. Unfortunately, most nights, if I manage to write a dozen words, I consider it an accomplishment. And this extends to other things as well. It extends to things like editors. There are people out there who will tell you must have a professional editor. You must have a professional cover made. And when you bring up topics like, yeah, working poor here, can't really afford a professional editor or professional cover to be made, their reply is, start saving. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't be in such tough financial straits if I was able to save money. Not that I don't try, but there's bills, and it's not like I'm bringing in a king's fortune every other week. But we won't go into that. Just that really is a rant for another day, and that's another video in and of itself. But just suffice to say that everybody does the same thing differently, and we all come at this in the way that works best for us, despite what some people may think. So I have to make my own covers. I do my own editing, and that's one of the reasons why sometimes it takes so long to get a book out, aside from laziness. I just edit, and then I edit again, and I edit again. Usually it's a minimum of 4 editing passes, which generally do take better part of the year. Closely followed by more edits. Brianna and the 3, for example, this last time took about 8 edits before it was published, before I finally got to the point where I was able to say this is a good story. Same thing with Wanderer. It went through 4 or 5 edits before I found the plot hole. And now that it's finished, it's going to go through 4 more edits. I think it's sometime in, I don't know if it's May or June. I think it's June that the editing will start. And then it's going to be the same thing, for a minimum of 4 edits, and we'll see how it goes. It'll get published. I just don't know exactly when. And on publishing, it kind of segues a little bit to what I wanted to talk about tonight. Bright Symmetry, the 3rd book. You can see the computer monitor reflecting on the screen, and I'm sorry. This is the 3rd book, and this is another collection. The difference is this tells one story spread out. It's a story of 2 characters spread out over the course of a year. Instead of traditional chapters, they're individual stories. The first story I came up with was called A God to Dance With. And it was one of those strange stories. It came to me the title came to me in a dream. I don't remember much of the dream. I remember somebody was walking down this grand staircase, like leading down into a massive ballroom. And as they were going down the stairs, I heard a man's voice say, "Great, a God to dance with." And from there, there were actually for a while 2 versions of A God to Dance With. I wrote the first version And this is going back to when I was still living in New Jersey. So we're talking about the mid 90s. Yeah, 93. Yeah, 93 to 97. Yeah, sometime in that 4 year period that I was living in New Jersey, I wrote A God to Dance With. And I, it was the fastest I have ever written a story. I wrote it in a month. And while I was writing it, I kept playing on the stereo over and over and over again Maurice Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. That was the only thing I listened to when I was writing. I had that when I was working almost strictly on A God to Dance With and listening to Pictures at an Exhibition. I think my neighbors were starting to hate me. And then it was finished, and I didn't like it. Partly because I wrote it so fast. I'm better when I can stop and let things kind of percolate for a while. Sorry, I'm looking at Brenda, my cat. She's over there by the bookcase, and all of a sudden she looked over into the dining room like she had just seen something. I swear one of these days I'm going to look over there and there's going to be a pack of grays just waiting for me. Anyway, so I wrote it in a month and I didn't like it, so I went back and I rewrote it. Kept the characters, the basic plot outline, kind of expanded it a little bit, and got it to the point where it exists now. The story basically as it exists now, which is the story of an immortal archaeologist named Scott Madigan, his lover Zoe Baird, and this archaeological expedition they're on, researching what's known on the planet Stelvra as the Lost God. The Sleeping God, excuse me. Not the Lost God. The Sleeping God. And that's also when I created my energy beings, the Dolwa. Because, spoilers, the Sleeping God is a Dolwa. And, long story short, the Dolwa bonds with Zoe's body and essentially becomes Zoe. And I like it. It's a nice little story. It's actually I actually wrote it long before I wrote All My Yesterdays Remembered, which is in Campfire stories. So chronologically speaking, in the order in which they were written, this is the first appearance of immortals in my universe. Actually, if you look at it from a timeline point of view, it is All My Yesterdays Remembered. Sorry, I got a hair in my eye. Oh, excuse me. And as I was doing at the time, I sent it out trying to get it published, and every place said no and no and again, no, it's not for us, it's not for us. Until finally, one day when I was down here in Florida, I sent it out again, and the editor that replied, rejected it, but she said that it seemed to be part of something bigger, and I'd never thought of it that way. I never thought of it that way, that it could be part of a larger project. And then I started thinking, okay, what came before, what came after? And I had been working on another story, kind of a sequel to it called my memory has gone blank. Called The Ark of Heaven. which introduced some other characters. An old friend of Scott's named Arcadia Ryan. Um, and 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 my mind went blank. I'm sorry. So I had originally sat and started planning out the stories. I'm trying to get back on track here, guys. I'm sorry. So I planned one story before A God to Dance With, and then originally there were going to be 12 stories, and I pared that down to 2, 4, 6, 7. A couple of them are very short. The first story, Only Time, is very short. It's essentially a prologue. Then there's A God to Dance With. Being, which is short, which is kind of, yeah, it's not that long a piece, and it's the immediate aftermath of A God to Dance With, and kind of the new Zoe cementing her position as Scott's new companion, and that she really is not a threat. Then there's Intermezzo, which takes place 6 months later. Then the Ark of Heaven, which is the longest story in the collection. Circle, which brings us back to Earth. We got to look at Earth in the late 45th century, excuse me. And we introduce my vampire character, Brenna Alexander, and her immortal husband, Georges. Actually, they were introduced in Only Time, but... And then, finally, there is And Forever, which answers a few plot points, or as I like to say, the circle comes to a close. Because I had written A God to Dance With, and by the time I was getting serious about A Bright Symmetry, I had finished The Ark of Heaven, and so I knew where those two were. I just had to fill in the space between the two, and then afterwards and before. Before was easy. It's just a little, essentially, like I said, prologue piece, getting quick introduction to Scott, Zoe as she was when she was alive and human. Then came Being, which was originally going to be a little bit longer. There was going to be a little bit of a different track. I was going to have, because there's a scene where Scott and Zoe are going to the office of the ship's captain to discuss what happened, and as they were walking through there, Zoe was noticing that people were staring at her, and she's trying to figure out why they're staring at her. Do they know that she's a dowa or what? And I decided, it's extraneous. I don't need that. I say a lot. I'm sorry. I apologize a lot too. I'm a big part Canadian. No, actually, I'm just neurotic. Anyway, Circle brings us to, like I said, brings us back to Earth, and addresses my vampire character and where is she at, because when we first see her, she in the 21st century, she's a member of a coven, but also a published author. Here in the late 45th century, she's still a published author, but now she's the head of a coven. And just little plot points that I may touch on later on in other stories. Also, that allows me to address a kind of a cliffhanger. I call it. I'm just going to I'm going to sidetrack here for a minute. Um, some people call it foreshadowing. I call it what the fuck moments. It's a point where a character does or says something where you go, the fuck? Did I just read that right? Like um, in in the prologue, there's a scene. There's Scott and Zoe, George and Brenna. They're in a little outdoor restaurant, and Zoe hears a voice say, "Goodbye, goodbye, Zoe," and that's a what was that? And then that's addressed in circle. Uh, then finally, the last story, And Forever, kind of closes the circle a little bit and addresses a few questions that were brought up in earlier in the story. For example, the Dolwa are Zoe describes the Dolwa as observers. They just watch. They don't interact. Although some of them, like herself, do find physical sensation to be very addictive because they're energy beings. If you saw a Dolwa in in their natural state, all you would essentially see is like a glowing sphere. Kind of a lightly glowing sphere on the outside, tendrils of energy connecting to a brightly glowing center point. That's what they look like in their natural state when they choose to be visible. They can bond with organic bodies, dead organic bodies. They will not, because the merging process would kill the human. Would kill the human. So they'll merge with a dead body. That's how Zoe becomes the Dolwa. I'm not going to tell you how she dies. Just that she dies. Sorry, spoilers. Anyway, in and Forever, that question is addressed. Why do they just observe? What do they do with the observations? And also, in a way, ties all the way back to Campfire stories and the story The End of Seconds. And I'm going to leave it right there. I like them. I like the stories. We haven't seen the last of Scott and Zoe, but I have to figure out where they're going to go next. And the thing is, Scott also pops up in earlier stories. There's the novel that George and Brenna are in that focuses mostly on Brenna. Scott is part of that, and so trying to make sure there's enough of a difference. Scott in the early 21st century and Scott in the late 45th century. How much is a person going to change in that many millennia? We'll see. We'll see. So getting back to it, we are going to. I am going to. We, yeah. I'm going to be bringing this to a close soon. We've just passed 24 minutes, and I am going to probably be thinking about going to bed soon. I have to be up early tomorrow. I have to be in at work at 8, and I have a hard enough time getting up. I wonder if that's going to show up on screen. I just had a pop up telling me my battery is down to 15%. So we are gonna be ending this. So like I said, I really like a Bright Symmetry. It's a nice little collection, nice good stories, and I really like it, and I hope you guys will buy it and read it and enjoy it. Again, as always, like and subscribe down there below. Hit the bell if there is one. I will have all the links down below. Probably if I'll probably get this up overnight, but I'll have it finished tomorrow. Like I said, I'm going to be probably going to be going to bed soon, and I'll finish it up when I get home tomorrow. But there will be the links down below to all the books. And again, as always, I ask if you do buy a book, please leave a comment. Please go back and leave a review, good, bad, or indifferent. I don't care anymore. I just want to get the books into people's hands and get them out there to the readers. You know, some writers want to change the world, some want to save it. I just want to entertain it for a couple hours. Although making a few bucks along the way wouldn't hurt. So that'll be it, guys. Thanks for listening. I hope you don't mind my rather rambling way I do these, but this kind of works best for me. I can never follow the scripts that I had been writing. So remember, as always, we are each of us the heroes of our own stories and the villains of someone else's. Take care. See you next week.